Hey, you guys! Today on the movie Retrospective, we are entering a world of pure imagination.
Yeah.
Talking about what is probably one of my favorite movies growing up, and one that I have no compunctions about watching over and over again. This is the original 1971 Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
One of Gene Wilder's great roles.
God damn it, he was so fucking good at this. Oh.
Even though watching the movie again, there's not a lot of content in the movie. It kind of getting to the factory isn't like a big part of the movie. I didn't realize there was so much of the movie was trying to get to.
Was build up.
But
that's what I kind of liked about it. And I will talk a little bit about the Tim Burton one because, okay, here's the deal.
Yeah, we saw them both.
Yeah. Interestingly, this actually wasn't the movie that I had scheduled for this week, but I was scrolling through Netflix and I was like, looking for something. I was like, man, I just want something kind of fun to watch that I can just kind of drink and not have to really pay attention to it or anything like that. And I was like, oh, they have the original Willy Wonka. It's like, I love that fucking movie.
Yeah.
So it's like we decided to watch it, and like I was kind of, inebriated. So I was sitting there going, I was like, Tom, we should review this because I love this movie. Yeah. And it's like I've seen it like a million times.
Yeah, I grew up watching it.
Yeah, it's like, it came out the year before I was born, and so I mean, ever since I was old enough to like watch movies, we've been seeing this movie because like, my parents ran a daycare. We had it like on Betamax, and then we had it on VHS and shit like that. So I've seen it. I probably have it memorized, I think, at this point. If you've
seen it on old CRT TV and VHS, you think you've seen the movie. You need to see it in HD.
It really looks nice.
It looks a lot better now on new TVs and, in the new digital media. It looks a lot better.
It seems like it took them a really long time to like put out a nice like Blu-ray of it. Yeah. I think in 2011 they did like a big like 40th anniversary like special edition like that's completely restored, and it's like widescreen, and it came with a book and all this other kind of stuff, and like a Wonka tin that looks like a chocolate bar and stuff.
Before my time, I never saw it in the theater, but this is the way it would have looked in the theater. It looked good.
Yeah.
Real good.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, now obviously most people know because this is kind of like, even though it's quote unquote a kid's movie, it has become like a massive cult classic. There's like fucking Gene Wilder memes. It's like there's all like everybody. Yeah, like everybody knows this movie. Even if they've never seen the original one, shots from it, all the character names, know the songs. And everything like that. So I feel like it's really kind of infiltrated into pop culture, even though it didn't do badly at the theater when it first came out, but it didn't do that great. I think it was like Wikipedia said it was the 53rd highest grossing movie of that year.
I don't think it really became popular until it hit television.
Yeah.
It was constantly on rotation, and, I think, what year did this come out, 68?
71.
71, okay, yeah. So I was 2.
And it first debuted on TV in 1975.
Okay.
And then it kind of got showed a lot on, on TV, like, because I think I saw it on just like regular network TV when I was growing up. And then later on when it came out on VHS, I think it's kind of like steamrolled, It took a while to like find its footing.
Yeah, back when there were only like 13 channels on your television.
Well, for a while we had 3, and then when we had, technically 4 because we had PBS, but then when they added like Fox 35, that was like a big deal, and that was like, I don't even remember when that was.
There were 13,
late 79, early 80s.
There were 13 channels originally on television.
Yeah.
Most of them didn't have channels on them. So there was like 7 probably actual channels. But
when you had the little clunk,
the
knob
dial had 13 on it. And that, and during that era, showing Willy Wonka was like an event when you were a kid. Every other kid in the neighborhood would watch it. Oh man, it's coming on, and I really only kind of remember this movie from maybe around 77, 78. That's around the time I kind of remember it.
I think that's probably, like I said, I probably saw it in 75 or 76 when I was, and I was 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah, huge crushes on the girls.
They were adorable.
Especially Veruca Salt.
She's adorable.
I just thought that girl was so fucking cute.
She's such a horrible brat, but she's really good at it.
No, I had a huge crush on it. Yeah, she was
she's super cute.
Yeah. And now the brattiness and shit,
Yeah, you were like, all right, I'm into it.
I thought it was hot. I was like, yeah, man.
Well, because she knew what she wanted.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And she was very vocal about letting people know. I
was into powerful women.
She likes those bossy girls. But yeah, so as most people know, this was based on the 1964 children's book by Roald Dahl, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Now, I think that, I'm not sure how much of a misconception this is, but it's like, it is true that Roald Dahl ended up not being completely happy with how the, how the film came out. Although, when they first started, talking about making this movie, he was actually brought on as a screenwriter. So he actually wrote the first iteration of the screenplay. And it was intended to be a musical from the beginning. It wasn't so much that, later on they came and said, oh, it's going to be a musical. And he was just like, oh, fuck that. I'm not into it. He was kind of just mad when they brought in, another screenwriter. I think it was David Wolper, to kind of, punch it up. They did change a few things from the book, but I read the book, but it was a long time ago. I read that, and I read Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator. But I feel like some of the complaints that he made about the changes were, I don't know. I don't want to say misguided necessarily, because I can see where he's coming from. But it's ironic to me that one of the main complaints he made when the film came out was that, one, he didn't like that the movie title had been changed to Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, which they actually did because, I don't know if most people know, but this movie was almost entirely funded by the Quaker Oats Company. They gave $3 million, which is about how much it cost to make it, and because they were launching a new line of candy bars, and they wanted to kind of get in the film business, as feature-length advertising, I guess. It ended up that the Wonka bars that they put out were not hugely successful, although they think the Wonka Candy Company is still around. But they actually named it after the character because of this movie. So this is basically a feature-length Quaker Oats commercial.
So it's product placement.
Even though I don't think people realize that nowadays. But yeah, Quaker Oats put up pretty much the whole budget
because Quaker owned Wonka?
Well, no, what ended up happening was that Mel Stewart, the guy that directed this, his daughter read the book and was like, Daddy, we need to make a movie out of this. So he knew a producer, and then he got Quaker Oats to buy the rights to the book.
Okay.
And then fund the movie, because they said, oh, well, because he was talking to Quaker Oats at the moment, because they were like, we want to get into the film business because we're launching a new candy line and blah, blah, blah. So it was kind of like kismet, it all kind of came together.
Because I do remember a candy line called Wonka.
There was, yeah.
But it didn't have anything to do with Quaker Oats.
No, they did own it.
Oh, I asked you that. Yeah. You said no.
Oh, I thought you meant that did they own something else? They did own that. They did own that.
Because I remember as a kid, the candy even kind of had a similar font.
Yeah, well, that's why.
Yeah.
Because it all tied together.
It was okay.
Yeah.
It was okay.
Like I said, I don't know if it's still around. And if it is still around, I don't know if Quaker Oats still owns it, although Quaker owns kind of a lot of shit.
Okay.
But yeah, so they changed it to Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory so it would tie in with the candy line better. Roald Dahl also thought, and like I said, this to me is very ironic in light of the later adaptation. He thought that the focus was too much on Willy Wonka and not on Charlie, who is the main character of the book. Which is very funny to me because the movie, the original, if you see it, pretty much the whole first half of the movie is about Charlie. It's about the other kids that find the golden tickets and stuff, but the focus is mainly on Charlie. His mom sings a song to him. It's kind of him and his grandfather and stuff like that, and him kind of, wanting to win the ticket and, his whole thing about it. But when Tim Burton made the shit in 2004, 2005, whenever it was, that movie was almost entirely about Willy Wonka. Yeah. And yet it was called Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. The kids in that one were almost like an afterthought. Yeah. Especially once they got to the factory and started walking around, it seemed like it was all on Johnny Depp's eccentric performance. Let's call it that. Yeah. I kind of hated it.
Yeah, that movie was.
I kind of hated it.
That movie's a problem there. That could have been a great movie, but they just made some wrong calls on that.
I love Tim Burton. I love Johnny Depp, but that movie was really a misfire, I thought.
Tim Burton can get awful Tim Burton-y sometimes.
He can,
but actually, he kind of kept it low, I think, in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Yeah.
Actually, what's his name? Fuck, man. I'm drawing a blank. I'm just waking up, people.
It's fairly early. We have coffee and not even booze. That's how early it is.
Yeah, Johnny Depp's a great actor. Mm-hmm. And he looked fucking fantastic in the movie. I was like, yeah, he's scoffed out and everything. He's in a fucking cool outfit. I was like, Wonka would look like that. But his choice of how to do that character, I just didn't agree with it.
Whew.
Yeah.
Woof, man.
I just kind of came across a little bit Michael Jackson-y, you know.
Yeah, he came across as, like, creepy.
He should have been more like Sweeney Todd, but funny. Like a funnier version of Sweeney. Because there was no threat in that character. And if you go back and look at Gene Wilder's a little bit threatening.
That was the best thing about Gene Wilder. And Gene Wilder was actually not the first choice. Like, actually, a lot of people wanted this role. Like, all the members of Monty Python wanted it. All this other stuff. So Roald Dahl actually wanted Spike Milligan. But he didn't want to do it. So when they got Gene Wilder, apparently, like, a bunch of other people had tried out for the role. But as soon as Gene Wilder walked in, they're like, that's him. That's who we want. So Gene Wilder said he would take, and in fact, after he left the audition, I guess the producer, the casting director, chased him down the hall and said, would you please do it? It's like, you're Willy Wonka. Gene Wilder said he would only do it if he could introduce the character with that very iconic thing where he comes out of the factory, like with the cane, and he's limping, and it takes a really long time, and everyone in the crowd goes quiet. And then, like, the cane gets stuck in the cobblestones, and he keeps going, then he falls forward, and then he tumbles. He said, I wanted to do that because I wanted to establish from the outset that you didn't know when this character was lying or when he was telling the truth.
Yeah, and that's the right call, because I remember that as a kid, seeing that for the first time, and what an impression that made. I was like, whoa!
Because it wasn't what you were expecting.
Yeah, and what I liked about this movie is that this chocolate factory and Willy were scary. There was a certain scary element to them. It was a mixture of scary and funny. And wonder and kind of horror, slightly.
Yeah.
But in the end, it all worked out. You knew he was a good guy. But that mix of emotion is very effective on kids.
Oh, yeah. And that's...
If it's too fucking funny, you just ignore it. If it's too scary, you block it out. That weird mixture, like the old rides at Disneyland.
Yeah.
Like the old Snow White. It had fucking scary shit in it. But I love that ride.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because kids like to be scared.
Oh, yeah.
They like a good mixture of that kind of stuff.
That was... Well, like I said, I think they really hit the perfect tone in the original movie, because Gene Wilder, he comes across as kind of avuncular, like he's a kindly person, but he also comes across as eccentric. Maybe he's a little mean, maybe he's a little mysterious. You never know, like, and maybe a little deranged. You're not quite sure. And it's like I said, he seems really unpredictable. Yeah. And I think that really kind of like informs the character, because you never know exactly how it's gonna go. Like
it was like an emotional roller coaster as a kid. Yeah. You go into the damn factory and there's this wonderland, this big room of candy. It looks like a park made out of candy. And the little fat kid gets fucking sucked up in the damn park. You almost thought he dies. Yeah. You know? And you're like, oh, what the hell? And then they get on that goddamn boat. Yeah. All right.
The fucking chicken with its head cut off in the centipede.
Yeah, they're cutting the chicken's head off, and then like Willy Wonka's, you know, I don't remember the fucking rhyme, but that fucking spooky ass rhyme about which way we're rowing. Yeah. It's just insanity. And then
his eyes are getting bigger.
And that emotional roller coaster of going up and down and up and down. I mean, that's kids don't forget it.
That's what I mean. And that movie
kind of like bond in with that movie, like, wow, that was exciting.
Yeah, that made a huge impression.
And if it didn't have those scary parts in there, you'd have forgotten about that movie.
Yeah, which I think is what's going to happen to the remake. I guess I don't want to call it a remake because it's just another adaptation of the novel. One thing I will give the Tim Burton one is it is a lot more faithful to the book.
It looks a lot better.
It looks cool. Like you get like a more of a sense, because
it's even got good songs in it.
Although
they're not as good as the old
songs are fun, but they're not very memorable.
Yeah.
The only one I remember is that Willy Wonka, Willy Wonka, and that's just because it's annoying as fuck.
Yeah.
That's the only one I remember.
The first one was pretty good.
Yeah.
About the kid that got sucked up in the pipe. That was a good one. They were all pretty good. It's just that they didn't have a same theme that kind of went through them.
Yeah.
And the original songs did kind of have a same theme.
Yeah.
The sound.
Well, I mean, the Oompa Loompa songs, that's one thing I didn't like. I kind of, in theory, I liked the idea in Tim Burton's adaptation that it's like every subsequent Oompa Loompa song was like from a different decade. Like one of them kind of sounded like a funky disco thing, and one sounded like, you know what I mean? And one sounded like an 80s. Rock. Yeah, they kind of sounded like that. One sounded like 70s folk or something like that. But the problem is that, one, the songs weren't super memorable, and two, the whole point of the Oompa Loompa songs was to like chastise the children. Yeah. And even though they took a lot of the lyrics in the Tim Burton version from Roald Dahl's original book, a lot of times I couldn't understand what they were saying. You know what I mean? Because like there was too much. The music was very overproduced, and it was like a big number and stuff. So I couldn't tell what the lyrics were a lot of the times. Because, my hearing is kind of shitty anyway. So I kind of like, in the original version, the Oompa Loompa songs, which all had the same tune, but then they would change the words up depending on the kid and depending on what they're...
Yeah, the original story, it wasn't all this body positivity and all this PC shit. No, that was the straight up, the movie was like, you fucking suck. You suck because you're fat, all right? You suck because you chew fucking gum, all right?
All the time.
Yeah, it just... You suck because you're violent. And that was the theme of this movie, you know what I mean? And it was effective.
It definitely was.
Yeah.
I feel like...
And then it came around and says it was your parents that are the reason.
Yeah, your parents fucked you up, and your parents suck too.
Fucking these kind of messages are what kids have to hear sometimes. I just believe so. It's like grim fairy tales.
Yeah, well, and the cool thing about it, too, is that in the original, and yes, there's a line in the original, like, near the end, because when Charlie asks Willy Wonka, it's like, what happened to the other kids? He says, oh, they're fine, or whatever, but they don't show them. Like, in the book, he says they're fine, and they leave the factory. In Tim Burton's version, Charlie sees them from the glass elevator, like, leaving the factory. But I think it was better in the 1971 to not show them leaving, because you could think maybe Willy Wonka's lying. Maybe he killed them.
Yeah, I assumed that. I
assumed they were dead.
I assumed that the shit was not reversed. That she looked like a goddamn blueberry.
Yeah.
And that fucking what's his name got fucking stretched in by his
taffy
machine. And that fucking the German kid was just fucking fat and stuck in damn pipes.
And he made into fudge.
They never got him out. Yeah.
It
was better to fucking think that.
It was better as a
kid to think that they were destroyed.
Yeah. That's what I think too.
That you had to pay for your sins.
Yeah.
Is the basic.
There was everything.
Because that's the way life is. You do fucked up shit. If you do fucked up shit, you could die.
Yeah. That's what I mean.
And that's the way it really is. Yeah. And that's. I had to be told that as a little kid because I was inclined to do fucked up shit.
You were,
like jump off the top of fucking roof of the house with a damn model airplane in my hands, trying to flap my wings with fucking album covers in between to try. Playing with stealing fucking gasoline out of a lawnmower and trying to set shit on fire. You know, I was a real boy.
Yeah, he did. He destroyed everything.
Fucking right.
But yeah, it's
I didn't burn down any houses.
Well, thank goodness for that.
I set shit on fire. Set the woods on fire.
My brother did too.
Yeah, we put it out, but it was close.
Yeah, my brothers did that as
well. Fucking close.
But they, putting off like M80s and shit like that. I don't know where the fuck they got them from.
Shooting each other with BB guns.
Yeah.
Put on a motorcycle helmet, shoot each other with BB guns. We're bulletproof.
Or a blowgun.
Yeah,
he had a blowgun with fucking darts in it.
Yeah. So these movies were effective because they reminded you from an early age that there are limits.
Yeah. Because the great thing about this is that yes, it's a kid's movie, it's a fantasy, but it has it's grounded in realism. It's scary. It's kind of even from the very beginning, one of my favorite scenes, and when we were rewatching it, because I've seen this a million times, but one of my favorite scenes, I have to say, and this is one thing I really like more than, the reboot or the Tim Burton version, is because this retains a lot more mystery. Like, there's a scene in it where Charlie Bucket is in front of the closed gates of Wonka's factory, and this dude, like, with a cart with all these knives and cleavers and shit hanging off it, he comes and, like, starts reciting that poem. It's called The Fairies, actually. Yeah. About, no, and then he says nobody ever goes in and nobody ever comes out. Yeah, that's the first
scare of the movie, actually.
Yeah, and it's like that. It just established such a tone, right. And it really like got me into it because I loved scary shit as a kid, and especially anything that was like a kids movie but also had scary shit in it. Like I was all into like The Secret of Nim and Watership Down and all that.
To me, all that kind of stuff gave the movie weight. Yeah, as a kid.
Yeah,
like this stuff matters because bad things can happen.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of some of the newer generation of kids, their parents are doping them up at an early age, and then they put them in a totally safe, fucking controlled environment and type of school. They don't even let them play fucking dodgeball. It's ridiculous because these kids aren't living life in full color, and once they're out of school, it comes at them. They can't handle it. You know what I mean? Fucking, I've just been listening to guys online talking about it. That they come out of school and go to the fucking first time they go to a fucking nightclub and fucking say something screwy and they get fucking their block knocked off. They didn't realize that could happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there are repercussions.
Well, yeah, like I said,
it's best if you learn that early.
So that's why I always kind of liked kids movies that had like a scary element.
Yeah.
So like I said, I really liked, that there was this mystery on there. I liked that they left it mysterious. You don't really know, because that was one thing that really pissed me off about the Tim Burton version, is that yes, it's more faithful to the book, but one, he added like a whole bunch of backstory, like why Willy Wonka became Willy Wonka. His dad was a dentist, and poor Christopher Lee like was in this. But it's like, who fucking cares about that? They show him going to Loompa Land and like getting the Oompas. Like, I don't fucking care about that. It's just like, it's better to leave it. It's like you go in this fucking factory, you don't know what the fuck is going on. You go in there, there's Oompa Loompas. He said, I got him from Loompa Land or whatever. They don't show it.
Yeah, actually, the Loompa Land scene in the remake demystified
That's what I mean. Land. That's dumb as hell.
They're not to show it.
Don't do that. Keep everything a mystery. Wow. I don't want to know Willy Wonka's
back. We're bagging on a movie that's 15 years old now? Almost 20 years old? It's 20 years old, I think.
14 years. I think it came out in 2005.
I think they tried to find I think Tim Burton was trying to find a compromise between the old movie and the book.
Yeah.
But there were certain things about the original movie that were done right. You know what I mean? In violation of the book. Because sometimes just because you write the book doesn't mean you know how to make the movie.
Yeah.
All right. The first movie was done right. They should have just did more of that.
Yeah.
And top that.
Because, there were a lot of changes made in the 1971 version from the book. Some of the changes, like the character of Slugworth, he was actually mentioned in the book, but he wasn't like a big character. He was actually added by the second screenwriter, like, because they thought they needed like an antagonist. Even though
that was a good idea.
And that was a good idea.
Right.
Also, the whole morality test thing. Where, Charlie goes in at the end and Willy Wonka yells at him.
Yeah.
And then he gives him back the everlasting gobstopper, like saying, even if you're mean to me, I'm not going to fuck you over.
Yeah. That's what gave the movie meaning.
Right. And it's like, that wasn't in the book either. Yeah. And in Tim Burton's version, which is more faithful to the book, basically he just gives Charlie the factory because he was the only kid left that didn't do anything bad.
Right.
And so that's another thing too. And this was also a problem with the book and with the Tim Burton version, is that Charlie in those is like saintly. He's like not like a real kid. He's almost like a cipher. Like everything he does is completely selfless. And it's not realistic. In like the original one, the kid who played Charlie, I think his name is Peter Ostrom, he was so fucking good in this, in getting you to invest in his character. He seemed like a real kid. Yeah. He was like a good kid, a very good-hearted kid, a selfless kid, but he did things like kind of selfishly, like a real kid would.
Yeah, Charlie and his uncle in the remake are basically non-entities, if you ask me. They're not.
That's what I mean.
Not even
it's like the kids were not.
In the original movie, what we're talking about here, they were fucking definite characters. They actually they drove the story forward, which that was a lot better. I don't know.
I never
read the book, But if it wasn't like that in the book, it should have been. Like I said, just because you write the book doesn't necessarily mean you know the story.
Yeah.
There were other guys that can come in there and go, oh, no, I see what you're doing, but you fucked this up. Watch this. And you can, Star Wars is like that. I throw that out a lot. Star Wars is like that, Star Wars can get too George Lucas-y.
Yeah.
And then it's not cool anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then it can go too Disney and it's not cool anymore,
But, I can see how, I can see where Roald Dahl was coming from. And like I said, some things, and we talk about this when we talk about Stephen King adaptations particularly, it's like some things that work very well on the page don't work very well in a movie. So I feel like Roald Dahl, I think, was trying to make the character of Charlie Bucket kind of bland and also kind of saintly so you could project yourself into it, like when you were reading it, which I can see that. But when you're making it into a movie, you need a kid that you can relate to, that you can feel for.
Yeah.
And I just don't feel like they did that. Like in the Tim Burton version, that kid was fine. He was adorable looking. He was a good actor, but he didn't seem like a realistic kid.
Yeah, it's a lot of times, the best movies are almost kind of like a group effort. There's one guy who kind of comes up with the main idea and everybody loves it. And then they go, yeah, it's great, but but we need this, and it's got to have this, and then and this is how you make it in a movie. There's 3 or 4 guys talking.
And the whole point, the whole scene of Charlie and his grandpa stealing fizzy lifting drinks, that was not in the book either.
Right.
But that was so good because that showed not only that Grandpa Joe would corrupt the kid if necessary, but it also kind of showed how, because the kid was excited. This was his dream come true.
Yeah.
And it's for a second, even though he knew it was wrong, he just got really excited.
Yeah.
And his grandpa was like, come on, let's do it. Have a good time and shit like that. And he gave into it, which a real kid would do.
Another thing that was kind of weird about both movies, I think the first movie kind of did a little bit of a better job at it. Kind of underlined the fact that most of Charlie's family was parasitical.
True.
They were just parasites. They stayed in bed all day and pretended to be sick while the mom did all the work.
Yeah. And then, Charlie did too. He was a paper boy.
Yeah, as soon as the golden ticket came up, all of a sudden Uncle fucking jumps out of bed like Grandpa Joe jumps out of bed.
I know. I was like, you fucking gold bricker.
So he was shamming.
You could have got up this whole time. You've been laying there for 20 years.
And in the remake, they showed it too. He just jumped up. Whoa, and I'm okay.
Yeah.
Which the theme of the movie is that kids are fucked up by their families. So they could have probably gone in a little more depth about getting the factory was a way of getting away from your family. They kind of did it in the second movie because Wonka was talking about how bad families were.
Yeah, because his dad had fucked him over.
But they kind of cleaned that up to say, no, families are okay. But I don't think that was the original intent of the story, probably. Is that your families are responsible for fucking you up.
I'm not really sure. Now, one thing I did like that they did in the original movie that was not from the book was that they made Charlie's dad was gone. He was presumably dead or he had taken off or something like that, which in a way kind of deepened his relationship with Willy Wonka because it was like he was looking for another father figure. Right. You know what I mean? So, because his dad was alive in the book and in the remake, he worked in a toothpaste factory and then he got laid off or something like that. So I like that they just made his dad not in the original movie. So it kind of made their situation seem a little bit more desperate. And also, like I said, that he was looking for a father figure. And, another thing too is that the coolest thing about, Gene Wilder, I love fucking Gene Wilder in pretty much everything. Young Frankenstein was one of my favorite comedies ever, but he's so good in this because he's I just love the fucking sarcasm. He seems unconcerned about the kids dying, oh, it'll be okay or whatever, but it's he's so calm and that, the kid falls in the river and his mom is flipping out and he's just help. Police, murder. You know what I mean? And it's just I fucking loved that when I was a kid.
Yeah, and that was kind of the problem with the remake. The Johnny Depp's interpretation of it was a little too affected. And, he
didn't seem like a real person. He seemed like a caricature.
It'd have been better had he just played that role very straight. And been a little bit more like Sweeney Todd. And then done some goofy stuff every now and then, or was funny every now and then. and kind of left him a little more ambiguous.
Yeah.
Because what made that character great, or Wilder's interpretation of that character, was he was slightly sinister.
And he seemed like a real person.
Yeah.
And I liked that he could, I mean, the problem with Johnny Depp's interpretation was that he seemed to hate these children. He didn't, it's like, you know, one of them was like, hey, I'm Violet Beauregard. And he was like, I don't care. You know what I mean? So it's like, it just seemed like this was a big trouble for him. And he had like all kind of like, you know, he didn't want to interact with anyone. Whereas Gene Wilder was very personable when he wanted to. But like at the beginning, he was like, oh, hey, everybody. And he was very friendly. Yeah. And, you know, he's getting them to sign the contract. And he's all, so he was like kind of friendly and happy, like happy to see them. He knew their names. He talked to their parents like very flatteringly and stuff like that.
But when they were in danger, he's like, oh, well.
But then he was like, oh, well, that shit happens. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's what I think was so brilliant about his character and why he's still remembered for that character.
When the Depp interpretation deviated from that formula, it was a mistake. It should have been that. That's that character.
Yeah.
Even if it wasn't that way in the book. That's what sold that movie, and that's what sold that book.
I think in the book he was actually not all that sinister. Okay. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think that was Gene Wilder's slight take on it.
Yeah, well, he called it right.
I think he did a good job of that, where he was just kind of like, I mean, yes, all of the kids like got, you know, the same shit happened to the kids in the book, but I don't think he was quite as laissez-faire about it, where he was just like,
the original is very rewatchable too.
I could watch that movie every day and be totally fine with it. Watchable. I love all the kids are great, especially the kid that plays Charlie Bucket. It's sad because I think this was either the only movie he did or one of a small handful. Like, apparently I read somewhere, I don't know if this is true or not, but after this movie, he got offered like a 5-picture deal and he said, no, I don't really want to be an actor. Like he became a doctor, I think, later on. I think he's a doctor. Yeah. He might still be alive, I'm not sure. Some of the other kids are not.
Movie's shot really well. It's got a really tight edit. I love the edit. It's even paced through the whole thing. It's an adventure tale.
Yeah.
And it's like a roller coaster ride, and it has the ending the ending is perfect.
And I love that they spent pretty much half the movie before you even get to the factory.
Build it up.
I love all the stuff with like how crazy like the contest is. Like they show like scenes from around the world, like the one woman that it's like they kidnapped her husband and they're gonna kill him unless she gives him the Crater Wonka bars, and then she's like, how long are they gonna give me to think about it? Like, I love all those fucking scenes where it just shows how crazy this thing is. And I love all the stuff with Charlie, where he keeps getting he got a candy bar for his birthday, and then like he, you know, finds money and stuff like, and then like open it, but it's not there. So it's just like builds up.
I didn't remember the build up being that long.
It is, yeah.
But when you're a kid, you know what I mean. When I was a kid, I was patient. I was like, oh, it's coming. Oh, it's coming.
Yeah.
Oh, it's coming. You know what I mean. And it's not an easy trip to get to the damn factory. So by the time you get there, it's almost kind of like, oh, we're here now, we're here.
Yeah, it was like, I really liked that long build-up, and it gave you all that time to get invested in Charlie, and it's like every time he buys a candy bar and he doesn't find it, you can like feel the kid's disappointment, you know what I mean?
Yeah, the whole golden ticket.
And it's like how shitty that would be. It's like if you were poor and you could only afford like one bar, and it's like you hoped and hoped, and then you open it and it's not, and it's like finally he gets it, and it's almost kind of like, you know, you're like cheering along with the kid because you've been waiting.
The remake doesn't really have that. The remake,
it's very quick.
Very quick.
They get to the factory very quickly.
The golden ticket angle is resolved very quickly, and then they're in the factory pretty quickly.
Yeah, you don't. And once they get to the factory, they don't flesh out any of the kids.
No,
really.
No, I mean, the kids don't really matter.
They don't, and and even Charlie, who's supposed to be the main character, he just kind of like gets forgotten about, you know, while Johnny Depp is walking around Johnny Depping. You know what I mean? And
he's depping the fuck out of place.
And it's all about him, like in his flashbacks and stuff.
The Oompa Loompas are more important than the kids of the movie, actually. That one Oompa Loompa that is all Oompa Loompas.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it seems like they have a bigger role.
Deep Roy, that guy's name is. Yeah. And they just cloned him over and over. And that was another problem I had. And I was watching like some of the other, some other like reviews of this where people like compared the two or compared them with the book and stuff like that. And I think it was the Nostalgia Critic. And he said, okay, now if you were reading the book and you had never seen the movies and you saw the word Oompa Loompa, what would you think an Oompa Loompa looked like? It's like, I don't think it would look like the one in the Tim Burton version, where it just looked like a little person in like an S&M outfit.
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like he would look like a little person with like an orange face and like green hair and like crazy like pants and
they called it right in the first movie.
Yeah, they would look like what you would imagine that would look like.
Yeah,
it was
a clown, like a little clown.
Yeah, it was like a lot more fantastical.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just feel like the Tim Burton version was, you know, they had all the CGI, you know, they did, you know, the trained squirrels thing, which they actually couldn't do.
Yeah,
that's from the book.
That was a cool scene.
Yeah, they couldn't do that from the book, obviously, because, you know, they didn't have CGI back then and they couldn't train all that many squirrels, I guess. But the geese with the golden eggs worked just fine. You know, and
the Tim Burton one was almost right, but the things that it was lacking and the things that it made mistakes on was enough for the whole thing to fall apart, if you ask me.
It seemed very...
It was almost there, but it just wasn't.
To me, it seemed like a lot of spectacle, and it seemed like it was very try-hard, and yet it was very lifeless. It seemed very lifeless.
I would have basically remade the first movie.
Yeah, because honestly, I think that the changes that they made from the book in the first movie... were the right things to do. Yeah. Like I said, they made, you know, the whole thing with Slugworth and him being like, you know, Willy Wonka hiring him, and the whole thing with the everlasting gobstopper and him giving it back at the end. Like fucking Willy Wonka's like freak out at the end. It's like, wrong, sir, wrong. You know, it's like, that was fucking great.
Yep. I would have just remade that first movie.
Yeah. It's like, really, I mean, and at this point, it's like, I can't see... I don't know. I feel like the original is just so iconic and has so, you know, kind of wormed its way into pop culture that even to remake it, like, I can't see Willy Wonka as anybody other than Gene Wilder. I can't see Veruca Salt as anyone other than that little girl. I just can't see it.
And I think Johnny Depp could have done Gene Wilder's version.
He could have.
And I think he probably could have topped it. Like, just that he just took it in another direction.
He just didn't have that sarcasm, that kind of like, he was kind of malevolent.
Well, you saw what he did in Sweeney Todd. I loved that one.
I did too. And like I said, I don't have anything against Tim Burton or Johnny Depp. I just think that was the wrong...
I would have just done direction. I just would have done... I would have made the first movie... I would have redone the first movie, done it better. That's what I would have done.
Yeah. I mean, because...
tried to change too much.
Yeah, you could do the special effects. You could make... You know, the factory seem bigger.
You could do the squirrels.
You could do the squirrels instead of the geese, you know what I mean? You could do shit that was in the book. I feel like the Tim Burton version, like, he tried to put everything that was in the book. He even put the stuff about Prince Pondicherry and the chocolate shit, which didn't really need to be in there. It was in the book. He was trying to put everything in there, and it just ended up... And then the whole, like, after the kid, like, you know, after they leave the factory and then like he's gonna go back and like make peace with his dad. Why the fuck did that need to be in there? That didn't need to be in there. It's just like slowed the whole shit down. It's like, I liked that now they have the technology to make the factory look you know, the way you would imagine it.
Yeah.
But I mean, honestly, in the 1971 version, I mean, I guess because it was the 70s and we didn't have CGI, but it's like, to me, as soon as they got into that fucking Candyland room, like in the beginning, I was like, wow, it was like super amazing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I should note that a lot of that candy in there was actually edible.
Yeah. And that 71, the ending of the 71 version was perfect. You know, I just would have, the movie is what people wanted. That's what sold that damn book.
Yeah.
So I would have just remade that movie.
Yeah, I mean, it was just, how could you have done that any better?
Maybe Burton, as a director, he's like, well, that's easy. I don't want to do that. You know, I can understand that. You know, he wanted to put his own signature on it.
Right, that's fair enough.
And he could go back to the book, but that's not what the audience wanted.
I mean, the whole thing, it's like, that's what kind of pissed me off, and I think it was like this in the book too. I mean, all the shit about, you know, Willy Wonka's backstory, that wasn't in the book. That was something that Tim Burton put in there because I guess he's got daddy issues that he needs to sort out or something. But it's like, well, it seems like a lot of his movies have that.
Yeah.
So that wasn't in the book, and I don't know why it had to be in there. Because like I said, demystifying Willy Wonka was not a good idea. No. Just like demystifying the Oompa Loompa. It was never a good idea to demystify a character.
No, the less you know about him, the better.
Right, because like I said, in the original, you didn't know, where did he come from? Why did why is this, it was like mysterious. And that was like way better because you never knew what was going to happen. You didn't know what he was going to do. But it's like, that was one thing that they did. Like at the end, like he gives the kid the factory, and then the kid says, "Oh, my family can't come, so fuck you. I don't want to do that." Because, like I said, the kid was like saintly, and it was like kind of annoying. Because no kid would be like that. Every kid would be like, "Okay,
oh, I can live on my own. I can have candy.
Nice.
Yeah, fuck this."
Yeah, it's like, "Bye, fam."
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's like, and then like they had to go through and resolve the daddy issues, and then he's like, "Okay, well, my family family's not so bad after all, so now all the family can move in and shit like that." Yeah. I mean, where you had to put like the end of the original, the 1971, where pretty much Willy Wonka is like, you're such a great kid, and like you passed the test, and I can't run the factory forever, and you're like the best kid I found. So he just immediately said, "Do you want the factory?" And he said, "Can my family move in?" And he's like, "Yeah." So that was the end. And he's like, "Yay, a happy ending."
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's like just they prolonged the shit too much in the Tim Burton version.
That's the way kids see reality anyway, and that's the ending a kid would like. Oh, I'm good enough? Okay, it's mine now. Yeah, that's it.
And you can have it all. You can have all the candy, all your family can come.
You can have the flying elevator, you can have all that.
Right, and it's like, so I think that was like way better, and it was tied up much quicker. It was just kind of like, they didn't have like all this like needless shit at the end where it was just like, oh, the kid was too good to like... too holy to like take the shit on unless his family could go. It was just like, that just seemed like kind of, I don't know, it just seemed unnecessary. Like I said, the kid in the first one, I mean, I related to that kid. He seemed like a real kid.
They could have changed it too, where that was the test. Like, no, I can't leave my family behind. Okay, you got it. That's
okay, you win. Yeah, if they wanted, why didn't they just do that? Yeah. But it's just like, no, they had this whole thing about Willy Wonka, and it's like he had daddy issues. Yeah. And it's like those had to be resolved. It focused too much on him. And that's what I mean. It's like, I feel like it's funny that, I mean, Roald Dahl has passed away, obviously, and they weren't allowed to, like, make Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator because he didn't like the original movie all that much. And he said, okay, well, you got to wait till after I'm dead, like, to make another fucking movie of this. So they did that. And it's ironic that he thought the original movie focused too much on Willy Wonka and not enough on Charlie. Whereas the Tim Burton version is pretty much all about Willy Wonka. Yeah. I mean, they kind of forget about Charlie, especially after they get to the... I don't even think he has that many lines. Like, after they get to the... None of the kids do. Like, after they get to the factory, it's all about the spectacle and Willy Wonka's weirdness. Yeah. And it just didn't work for me. It's like, I really... Like I said, I love Tim Burton. I love, Johnny Depp. But it just felt like cringy. It was really cringy.
Yeah, Wonka's weirdness wasn't compelling either. It was just like not that weird. It was just cringy, like you said.
Yeah, it wasn't weird. It wasn't like dangerous like Gene Wilder's one, and like kind of like fascinating. Yeah. It was just kind of like, ooh, get away from me, creep. It's like some weirdo that would sit next to me on the bus. You know what I mean? It was like that. Where I just wanted to get away. Yeah, it's like that's what he gave me a Michael Jackson vibe, and it's like I just wanted to get the fuck away from him. Yeah. Whereas Gene Wilder's character, it's like even though you thought he might be slightly crazy,
but magnetic person.
He was you kind of wanted to hang out with that guy because you didn't know what was going to happen. He seemed super cool. He also seemed more like an adult that could actually run a chocolate factory. Yeah. Whereas Johnny Depp's character kind of seemed like a moron or a child in a man's body that wouldn't be able to run a successful chocolate factory, so I didn't really buy it there. Everybody in the Tim Burton version just seemed like a caricature and not like a real person. Yeah. Whereas everybody in the original movie, it seemed a lot more grounded in reality, and everyone seemed like a real person. Yeah. Even though it did have kind of like a fantastical or fantasy, like a fairy tale type of atmosphere. And it's funny because I grew up, as many times as I've seen this fucking movie, the whole time I grew up, I thought it was shot in the UK, just from the, outside of the street. Yeah. It's not. It's Munich. It's Germany. Okay.
And the cars look like British cars.
Yeah, and even that, they sell the same ones around Europe and stuff like that. Even the factory, that they used for Wonka Factory, that was a real factory. It was the Munich Gasworks. Okay. So they wanted to use Munich because, one, it was way cheaper to film over there than it was in the U.S., but two, because they wanted it to not be immediately recognizable to American audiences. Right. But it's like I was always confused because I'm like, Charlie's at school and like his teacher's British, and then like some of the other kids, like Veruca and stuff, were British. But then
there's like American kids in it.
But then there's American kids mixing.
It was happening over the whole world, so it makes sense.
It was kind of supposed to be like you weren't really supposed to know where it was taking place because it was supposed to be like a fantastical element. So everybody lives in Munich, You live in like fairy tale land. All right, so we've probably gone on about this long enough, but yeah, like I said, I love this movie. Both versions are on Netflix if you want to compare the two. I'm actually kind of pissed off that I watched the Tim Burton one because now it just made me kind of sad, and it made me want to watch the original one again, even though I watched it a couple nights ago. But
I didn't think it was that bad. I just think
I don't know. It made me angry.
Yeah.
It made me angry. And it's just like, if they had somebody else play it, like, you know, because they were actually going to get like John Cleese or somebody like that, I think that would have been a lot better.
Yeah.
But I just didn't like Johnny Depp in it, or at least I didn't like his take on it.
I didn't like his take.
But yeah,
he could have done Wilder's version, but they didn't.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. If you've never seen the 1971 Rose, you definitely have to see that. I mean, Gene Wilder is fucking amazing in it. All the kids are great in it. It's just the songs are great. You know, they still remember them, even though at the time it seemed like people said, "Oh, the songs weren't that memorable." I'm like, this shows what you know. Yeah. Everybody still remembers that. I heard Pure Imagination in a fucking ad for Apple or something like that.
Yeah, and I can't believe that song was not in the remake of that movie. I mean, what the hell are they doing?
I don't know. Maybe they probably couldn't get the rights to it, but they wanted to do a whole thing. Yeah, but seriously, check it out. They're both on Netflix. Like I said, I don't recommend the new one, but the original is a classic. And if you haven't seen it, you really need to rectify that situation right now.